Sparks flew from the plasma torch as Sam Rivers welded another patch onto the old freighter's hull. The metal was cheap, salvaged from a dozen different ships, but it would hold. It had to hold. Out here on Haven's Edge, making do with scraps, wasn't just a way of life, it was the only way to survive. The frontier colony existed in the shadow of 3 different star systems, a place where nobody asked too many questions about where you came from or what you were running from. Humans, aliens, and everything in between called this dusty rock home. The buildings were mostly prefab structures bolted together with hope and determination. The spaceport consisted of a single landing pad that doubled as the town square on market days. Sam wiped sweat from his forehead and stepped back to admire his work. The freighter would fly again, at least long enough for Captain Morris to make his next delivery run to the inner colonies. That was how things worked here. You fixed what was broken, you helped your neighbors, and you tried not to think too hard about what the galaxy beyond looked like. The workshop door creaked open, letting in a blast of hot, dusty air. Sam turned, expecting to see another customer, with another impossible repair job. Instead, he found himself looking at a young alien girl who couldn't have been more than 16 years old. She was Atlari, with the characteristic blue-green skin and delicate features of her species. But what caught Sam's attention wasn't her appearance. It was the crude mechanical legs that supported her lower body, sparking and wheezing with every painful step. The girl moved carefully across the workshop floor, her artificial limbs clearly causing her discomfort. She wore a simple jumpsuit that had seen better days, and a translator collar around her neck that would convert her chittering native language into something Sam could understand. Her large, dark eyes swept across the cluttered workspace, taking, in the half-finished projects, the jury-rigged equipment, and the general organized chaos that Sam called home. Sam set down his tools and grabbed a clean rag to wipe his hands. He'd seen his share of hard luck cases out here on the frontier, but something about this girl struck him differently. There was a determination in the way she carried herself, despite the obvious difficulty she had just walking. She stopped in front of his main workbench and looked up at him with those intense dark eyes. When she spoke, her voice came through, the translator as a young woman's voice with a slight accent that the device couldn't quite smooth out. "You are Sam Rivers," she said. It wasn't a question. "They tell me in town that you can fix anything." Sam nodded slowly. "I try my best." "What can I do for you, miss?" "My name is Kira," she said. "I need you to build me something nobody has ever built before." Sam raised an eyebrow. He'd heard that request before, usually from someone who had more credits than sense. But looking at this girl's worn clothing and makeshift prosthetics, he doubted she fell into that category. "I'm listening," he said. Kira reached into a small bag at her side and pulled out a data pad. Her fingers moved across its surface with practiced ease, and suddenly the air above the device shimmered with a holographic display. Images of sleek racing vehicles appeared, floating in the space between them. The machines were beautiful in their deadly simplicity, long pods with massive engines that could tear across alien landscapes at incredible speeds. "Podracers," Sam said, recognizing the vehicles immediately. "You want me to build you a racing pod?" Kira nodded, but her expression remained serious. "Not just any pod racer, one that I can pilot." Sam looked down at her mechanical legs, understanding dawning on him. Standard pod racers required perfect reflexes, lightning-fast reactions, and complete physical coordination. The controls were designed for beings with full mobility and perfect health. Even experienced pilots with no disabilities crashed and died regularly in these machines. "Kid," Sam said gently, "these things are death traps even for the best pilots, and with your—" He gestured toward her legs. "My disability," Kira finished for him, no emotion in her voice. "You can say it. I am not ashamed." She manipulated, the holographic display zooming in on different aspects of the racing pods. "I know what these machines can do. I know how dangerous they are. But I also know that I need this." Sam studied her face, seeing something there that went beyond simple desire or even determination. This was desperation, the kind that came from having lost everything and needing something, anything, to hold on to. "Why?" he asked. Kira was quiet, for a long moment. The holographic display continued to rotate slowly between them, showing the graceful death machines from every angle. Finally, she spoke. "I used to fly," she said, "before the accident. My parents worked in the asteroid mining fields out beyond the 7th planet. I was their pilot. I could thread our ship through asteroid fields that would make veteran spacers sick with fear. Flying was everything to me." She paused, and Sam could see the pain in her eyes. Not physical, but something deeper. The mining platform we were working exploded. "Equipment failure," they said. "My parents died instantly. I was lucky," they told me. "Lucky to survive with just crushed legs." Her voice carried bitter irony. "They gave me these things." She gestured at her mechanical limbs. "Basic mobility units, charity from the mining company. I should be grateful," they said. Sam felt a familiar anger rising in his chest. He'd seen too many corporations on the frontier treat people as disposable resources. Mining companies were among the worst. "The legs don't work properly," Kira continued. "They malfunction constantly. I can barely walk, let alone run or jump, or do any of the things I used to do. But worst of all, they won't let me fly. No one will give a pilot's license to someone with my limitations." She looked up at him, and Sam could see the fire burning behind her eyes. "But Podracers don't require licenses out here. And if I could build one that works with my condition instead of against it." She let the sentence hang in the air. Sam looked at the holographic display again, his engineer's mind already turning over possibilities. The girl was right about one thing. Out here on the frontier, Podracer competitions were largely unregulated. If you could build it and you could survive riding it, you could race it, but the technical challenges were enormous. Standard Podracer controls required split-second timing and perfect coordination between hands and feet. The machines were built for beings who could trust their bodies completely. Adapting one for someone with Kira's limitations would require completely rethinking how the pilot interface worked. "This isn't just about building a racing pod," Sam said. "You're talking about revolutionizing how these machines work." Kira nodded. "I know it sounds impossible, but I have been studying these designs for months. I have ideas and I have credits." She reached into her bag again and pulled out a small but genuine credit chip. "Not much, but enough for materials if you are willing to contribute the labor." Sam took the credit chip and checked its balance. It wasn't much, as she'd said, but it was honest money. More importantly, it represented sacrifice. This girl had saved every credit she could scrape together for this dream. He looked at her again, taking in the determination in her posture despite her obvious physical discomfort. In his years as a frontier mechanic, Sam had learned to recognize people who were worth betting on, people who would push through any obstacle to achieve their goals, people who refused to give up no matter what the galaxy threw at them. Kira was one of those people. "All right," Sam said finally. "But I have conditions. First, we do this right. No shortcuts, no cheap materials where safety is concerned. If we're going to build you a pod racer, it's going to be one that will keep you alive." Kira's face lit up, with the first genuine smile Sam had seen from her. "Second," Sam continued, "you're going to be involved in every step of the build. I want you to understand this machine better than you understand your own heartbeat, because once you're out there racing, I won't be able to help you." "I understand," Kira said. "And third," Sam said, his expression growing more serious, "if, at any point during this build, I decide the design isn't safe, we stop. No arguments, no negotiations. I won't be responsible for sending you to your death." Kira nodded solemnly. "Agreed." Sam extended his hand, and after a moment's hesitation, Kira took it. Her grip was firm despite her youth. "Then let's get started," Sam said. "We've got a lot of work ahead of us, As Kira settled into a chair beside his workbench and began explaining her ideas for the Podracer's design, Sam felt something he hadn't experienced in years. Excitement. Not just for the technical challenge ahead, but for the chance to help someone reclaim what they'd lost. Outside, the twin suns of Haven's Edge were setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and purple. Inside the workshop, by the light of work lamps and holographic displays, two very different beings began planning something that had never been attempted before. Neither of them realized that their collaboration would soon attract attention from places far beyond their quiet frontier world. 3 weeks into the project, Sam realized he was in over his head. What had seemed like a straightforward modification challenge had revealed itself to be something far more complex. Every solution they tried created 2 new problems. Every breakthrough was followed by a setback that sent them back to the drawing board. The workshop had transformed into something resembling a mad scientist's laboratory. Holographic displays floated at every workstation, showing 3-dimensional models of engine components, control systems, and biomechanical interfaces. Half-finished prototypes cluttered every available surface. The air smelled permanently of ozone from the welding equipment and the sharp tang of synthetic lubricants. Kira had proved to be more than just an eager student. Her knowledge of Atlari biomechanics was extensive, and her understanding of flight dynamics was intuitive in ways that impressed even Sam. But their fundamental problem remained unsolved. Standard Podracer controls simply could not be adapted for someone with her physical limitations. Sam stood back from their latest attempt, a control interface that looked more like a medical device than racing equipment. Cables snaked from a central console to a harness that would supposedly translate Kira's upper body movements into racing commands. In theory, it should work. In practice, the response lag was nearly 2 full seconds, which would be fatal at racing speeds. "It's still too slow," Kira said, echoing his thoughts. She sat in the test harness, her mechanical legs locked in place while she worked the controls. Despite weeks of trying, they couldn't get the response time below dangerous levels. Sam rubbed his eyes, feeling the fatigue that came from too many late nights and too much concentrated problem-solving. "Maybe we're thinking about this wrong," he said. "How do you mean?" Instead of answering immediately, Sam walked over to where Kira sat in the test rig. Her mechanical legs were clearly visible, all crude servos and basic actuators. Colony grade, prosthetics built for basic mobility, nothing more. But as Sam looked at them with fresh eyes, an idea began to form. "Tell me about your legs," he said. Kira looked down at her prosthetics with obvious distaste. "What about them? They are simple machines, basic motors, basic control systems. They barely work half the time." "But they do work," Sam said. "They interface with your nervous system somehow, right?" "Yes, through neural plugs installed during the surgery. But the connection is very limited. I can send basic movement commands, but there's no feedback. I cannot feel anything through them." Sam knelt down to examine the connection points where Kira's prosthetics attached to her body. The technology was indeed basic, designed for function rather than elegance, but the principle was sound. Neural impulses were being translated into mechanical action. "What if we're thinking about this backwards?" Sam said. "Instead of trying to adapt Podracer controls for you, what if we adapted you for Podracer controls?" Kira frowned. "I do not understand." Sam stood up and began pacing, his mind racing through possibilities. "Standard Podracer pilots use their hands and feet to control the machine, right? Hands for steering and fine control, feet for throttle and braking. But what if we could give you feet that were actually part of the Podracer itself?" The idea was radical, probably crazy, and definitely beyond anything Sam had ever attempted. But the more he thought about it, the more sense it made. Instead of trying to work around Kira's disability, they could integrate it into the design. "You want to connect me directly to the machine?" Kira said, understanding dawning in her voice. "More than that," Sam said, excitement building. "I want to make you part of the machine. Your neural interface plugs could connect directly to the Podracer's control systems. No lag time, no mechanical translation. You think about turning left. The Podracer turns left instantly. Kira was quiet for a long moment, considering the implications. That would require completely rebuilding my prosthetics and designing a Podracer unlike anything that has ever been built? Yes, Sam said simply. It could be dangerous. If something went wrong during the neural connection process, it could kill you, Sam finished. I know. That's why I'm giving you the choice. We could keep working on conventional modifications, try to make something that's merely functional, or we could try this. Kira looked down at her mechanical legs again, then back up at Sam. If we do this, if we make it work, I would truly be able to fly again? Better than before, Sam said. You wouldn't just be piloting a machine, you would become the machine. That night, Kira made her decision. They would attempt the full biomechanical integration. The next morning, Sam began the most complex project of his career. The first step was studying Kira's existing prosthetics in detail. Sam carefully disassembled one of the legs, mapping every circuit and connection point. The neural interface technology was primitive but serviceable. The real challenge would be expanding its capacity to handle the massive data flow required for high-speed racing. While Sam worked on the electronics, Kira researched her own people's history with biomechanical integration. The Atlari had once been masters of such technology, before their homeworld was destroyed in an interstellar war. Most of their advanced knowledge had been lost, but fragments remained in historical archives and family memories. My grandmother once told me stories, Kira said as she worked beside Sam, carefully cleaning and organizing components. Before the war, some Atlari could interface directly with their starships. They called it becoming one with the void. Most people thought it was just folklore. Maybe it wasn't, Sam said. He was deep in the guts of Kira's prosthetic control unit, tracing neural pathways that seemed far more sophisticated than they had any right to be. These interfaces in your legs, they're not just basic motor control systems. There are entire unused circuits here, pathways that could carry much more complex signals. As the days passed, their workshop became a fusion of human engineering and Atlari biomechanics. Sam designed new control systems based on human technology, but incorporating principles that Kira remembered from her people's stories. They worked 18-hour days fueled by excitement and determination. The breakthrough came during their fourth week of work. Sam had been struggling with a feedback problem that was causing system crashes in their prototype neural interface. No matter how he adjusted the settings, the connection would fail within seconds of activation. It's fighting itself, Kira observed as they watched yet another test failure. The human electronics expect linear sequential inputs, but Atlari neural patterns are holistic, everything connected to everything else. Sam stared at the diagnostic displays, seeing the problem for the first time. He'd been trying to force Atlari biology to work with human engineering principles. Instead, he needed to let the Atlari patterns guide the design. They spent the next week completely rebuilding the interface architecture. Instead of trying to translate Kira's neural impulses into human-style control signals, they created a system that could accept and process the complex, interconnected patterns that her brain naturally produced. When they finally tested the new system, the results were beyond anything they had hoped for. Kira connected to their prototype control system and immediately began flying a simulated Podracer through virtual courses that would have challenged experienced human pilots. Her response times were measured in milliseconds rather than seconds. It's like the machine is part of me, Kira said, her eyes wide with wonder as she navigated the simulation. I can feel every circuit, every sensor. It's not like controlling a vehicle, it's like growing new limbs. With the control system proven, they turned their attention to building the actual Podracer. This phase of the project required different skills, and Sam found himself learning as much from Kira as he taught her. Her understanding of aerodynamics and energy flow patterns came from a completely different perspective than human engineering, leading to design choices that seemed impossible, but worked perfectly. The Podracer that emerged from their collaboration looked unlike anything in known space. Where human designs emphasized sharp angles and aggressive styling, their machine flowed like liquid metal. The engines were integrated into the overall structure instead of being bolted on as afterthoughts. The cockpit was designed as a biomechanical interface chamber rather than a simple pilot compartment. Most importantly, the connection points for Kira's neural interfaces were built into the machine's very foundation. When she plugged in, she didn't just sit in the Podracer. She became it. Every sensor became an extension of her nervous system. Every control surface an extension of her will. Their first real-world test came on a calm morning when the spaceport was nearly empty. Sam had set up a simple course using navigation beacons. Nothing too challenging for a first flight. They both knew that if something went wrong at this stage, all their work would be for nothing. Kira settled into the cockpit with obvious nervousness. Despite all their testing and simulation work, this was the moment of truth. Sam made final checks on all systems, confirming that the neural interfaces were functioning properly and that all safety protocols were active. "Remember," Sam said, "through the communication system, start slow. Get a feel for how everything responds before you push any limits." "I understand," Kira replied, but Sam could hear the excitement in her voice. The Podracer's engines came online with a sound unlike anything Sam had ever heard. Instead of the harsh roar typical of racing machines, their creation hummed with a deep musical tone that seemed to resonate through the ground itself. The entire machine seemed to wake up as Kira's neural patterns merged with its control systems. What happened next left Sam speechless. Instead of the careful, tentative flight he had expected, Kira launched the Podracer into the sky with fluid grace. She moved through their simple test course like she had been born to it, taking turns at speeds that should have been impossible, and executing maneuvers that defied conventional physics. When she finally landed, both of them were shaking with adrenaline and relief. They had done it. They had built something that didn't just work, but worked better than either of them had dared to hope. "How did it feel?" Sam asked as Kira disconnected from the neural interfaces. She was quiet for a long moment, searching for words to describe the experience. "Like coming home," she finally said. "For the first time since the accident, I felt complete." Word of their success spread quickly through Haven's Edge's small community. Within days, people were coming by the workshop just to see the impossible. Podracer that a human mechanic and an Atlari girl had built together. Local pilots were amazed by the machine's performance capabilities, but what impressed them even more was seeing Kira fly with a skill and confidence that made her disability irrelevant. But Sam knew their real test was still to come. Building a functional Podracer was one thing. Racing it against experienced pilots in actual competition would be something else entirely. As requests came in for Kira to enter local racing events, Sam found himself both proud of what they had accomplished and worried about what challenges lay ahead. Their creation had exceeded every expectation, but success often brought its own problems. And in the vast, dangerous galaxy beyond Haven's Edge, there were always people watching for new technologies that could be exploited or controlled. For now, though, Sam was content to watch Kira practice her aerial maneuvers, her Podracer dancing through the sky with impossible grace. They had taken something broken and made it better than new. Whatever came next, they would face it together. The first race changed everything. What started as a simple local competition on Haven's Edge turned into something that would be talked about across 3 star systems. Sam watched from the pit crew area as Kira lined up her Podracer against 5 other machines, each piloted by experienced racers who had been competing for years. The Crimson Canyon race was supposed to be routine. A 12-kilometer course through the jagged rock formations that gave Haven's Edge its distinctive landscape. Most of the other pilots were human colonists who had been racing since the settlement was founded. They knew every twist and turn of the course, every wind pattern and thermal updraft that could give them an advantage. None of them were prepared for what Kira could do. Sam had spent the morning going over final checks with Kira, but he knew the machine was perfect. Every system had been tested and retested. The biomechanical interface was running flawlessly. The real question was whether Kira was ready for the psychological pressure of actual competition. She seemed calm as she settled into the cockpit and began the neural connection sequence. The Podracer's systems came online with their characteristic musical hum, and Sam watched the diagnostic displays confirm full integration between pilot and machine. To anyone watching from the outside, it looked like Kira was simply sitting in an unusually shaped racing pod. They couldn't see the streams of data flowing between her nervous system and the machine's control networks. The race started with a traditional formation launch. All 6 pod racers lifted off simultaneously and headed for the first checkpoint, a narrow canyon passage that would separate the skilled pilots from the merely brave. Sam expected Kira to hold back initially, getting a feel for racing against other machines before making her move. Instead, she shot forward like a bullet. By the time the other racers reached the canyon entrance, Kira was already through it and climbing toward the mountain peaks that marked the course's halfway point. Her pod racer moved through the air with an efficiency that seemed to mock the laws of physics. Where other machines fought against air resistance and gravitational forces, hers flowed around and through them. The crowd's cheers changed from polite enthusiasm to stunned amazement as Kira's lead continued to grow. She wasn't just winning, she was making the other pilots look like they were standing still. Her cornering speeds were impossible, her acceleration curves defied conventional engine capabilities, and her racing line through the canyon passages was so perfect it looked like it had been calculated by a computer. Sam found himself holding his breath as he watched the race telemetry. Kira wasn't just flying the pod racer, she was dancing with it. Every movement was fluid and natural, as if the machine was an extension of her body rather than a separate vehicle she was controlling. The other pilots began pushing their machines harder, trying to keep up with the unknown girl who was rewriting the rules of pod racer competition. But the harder they pushed, the more obvious it became that they were competing in a different category entirely. Kira's integration with her machine gave her advantages that conventional piloting simply couldn't match. She finished the race nearly 2 full minutes ahead of the second-place pilot, a veteran racer named Rick, who had won the Crimson Canyon race 3 years running. The crowd stood in stunned silence for a moment before erupting in cheers and questions. Who was this girl? What kind of machine was she flying? How had an unknown pilot with a homemade pod racer just humiliated some of the sector's best racers? Sam made his way through the crowd to where Kira was climbing out of her cockpit. She looked dazed, like she was having trouble adjusting from the complete sensory integration of the flight to the more limited input of her regular senses. "How do you feel?" Sam asked. Kira smiled, and it was the most genuine expression of joy Sam had ever seen from her. "Alive," she said simply. But their celebration was interrupted by the arrival of race officials. The head judge, a stern-faced woman named Director Hayes, approached with a datapad full of telemetry readings and an expression that suggested serious concerns. "Miss Kira," Director Hayes said, "we need to discuss your machine. The performance readings we recorded during the race are unusual." Sam stepped forward, instinctively protective. "Is there a problem with the race results?" "Not with the results," Director Hayes replied. "But your pod racer's performance characteristics are unlike anything in our databases. We need to conduct a full technical inspection to ensure compliance with racing regulations." What followed was the most thorough examination Sam's workshop had ever undergone. Racing officials spent 3 days crawling over every component of Kira's pod racer, running diagnostics on systems they didn't fully understand, and consulting regulation books that had never anticipated technology like theirs. The problem, as Sam had feared, was that their biomechanical integration system didn't fit neatly into existing categories. It wasn't illegal exactly, but it represented such a radical departure from conventional racing technology that officials weren't sure how to classify it. "The neural interface gives her reaction speeds that are essentially superhuman," Director Hayes explained during one of their many meetings. "Other pilots are protesting that this creates an unfair advantage. Her condition requires these modifications," Sam argued. Without the neural interface, she couldn't pilot a standard pod racer at all. We understand that, Director Hayes said. But the advantage the system provides goes beyond simple accommodation. She's not just competing on equal terms, she's operating at a level that conventional pilots can't match. The debate raged for weeks. Racing officials consulted with technical experts, legal advisors, and even xenobiologists who specialized in Atlari physiology. Meanwhile, word of Kira's incredible performance spread throughout the racing community and beyond. Requests began, arriving for Kira to compete in races across the sector. Promoters offered substantial prize money for appearances. Racing teams tried to recruit her with offers that would have made Sam wealthy beyond his dreams. The media attention was intense and often intrusive, with reporters constantly asking about the miracle technology behind Kira's success. Through it all, Kira remained focused on racing. While Sam dealt with officials and reporters, she continued to practice and refine her skills. Every flight revealed new capabilities of their integrated system. She began performing maneuvers that looked impossible to outside observers, but felt natural to her merged consciousness with the machine. The breakthrough came when Director Hayes watched Kira practice one afternoon. Instead of observing from the ground, the race official rode in a chase vehicle that followed the pod racer through its training routine. What she saw changed her perspective completely. She's not cheating the system, Director Hayes told Sam afterward. She is the system. The machine doesn't give her superhuman abilities. It reveals abilities she already had but couldn't access because of her physical limitations. The ruling, when it finally came, was elegant in its simplicity. Kira's biomechanical integration system was classified as adaptive technology, similar to corrective lenses or hearing aids. The officials determined that while it gave her capabilities, beyond those of an unaugmented pilot, it was compensating for disabilities that would otherwise prevent her from competing at all. More importantly, they ruled that any pilot was free to attempt similar modifications to their own machines, provided they met safety standards. The implication was clear. Kira's advantage came not from illegal technology, but from innovative engineering combined with her unique neural compatibility with Atlari biomechanical systems. With the technical challenges resolved, Kira began entering races throughout the sector. Each competition brought new challenges and new victories. She faced pilots with decades of experience, machines worth more than entire colonies, and courses that tested every aspect of racing skill. She won them all. But success brought its own problems. Other pilots began demanding access to similar biomechanical integration systems. Racing teams offered Sam enormous sums for the technical specifications of Kira's pod racer. Government officials from various worlds expressed interest in the military applications of their technology. Sam found himself becoming protective of not just the technical details, but of Kira herself. The attention was overwhelming for a girl who had been essentially invisible just months earlier. Fame was proving to be more dangerous than anything they had faced in their workshop. The situation reached a critical point when Kira was invited to compete in the Outer Rim Championships, the most prestigious racing event outside the Galactic core worlds. The prize money was substantial, but more importantly, winning would establish Kira as the premier pod racer pilot in known space. "Are you ready for this?" Sam asked as they prepared for the trip to the championship venue. Kira looked up from the final adjustments she was making to her neural interface connections. "I've been ready since the first day I walked into your workshop," she said. "The question is whether the galaxy is ready for us." The championship race took place on Kepler's world, a planet famous for its challenging terrain and harsh weather conditions. The course was 25 kilometers of the most difficult racing environment in the Outer Rim, with sections that passed through active storm systems and canyon passages barely wide enough for a single pod racer. 48 pilots had qualified for the championship, representing the best racing talent from across the sector. Many of them had been competing for decades. Some flew machines that cost more than small starships, All of them were there to prove they were the fastest pilot in the galaxy. Sam watched from the pit area as Kira prepared for the race. The neural connection process had become so routine that she could complete it in under 30 seconds. Her, Podracer's systems came online with their familiar musical hum, and the diagnostic displays confirmed perfect integration between pilot and machine. As the starting signal echoed across the racing complex, 48 pod racers launched into the stormy sky of Kepler's world. Sam lost sight of Kira's machine almost immediately in the chaos of the mass start, but the telemetry displays told him everything he needed to know. She was pulling ahead of the pack with the same fluid grace she had shown in her first race back on Haven's Edge. But this time, she was facing the best pilots in the galaxy, and they weren't going to let her win easily. The race became a running battle between Kira and 3 veteran pilots who had divided the championship titles among themselves for the past decade. They pushed their machines to the absolute limits, taking risks that would have been fatal for lesser pilots. The course claimed 6 machines in the first 10 kilometers, victims of the harsh conditions and desperate attempts to keep up with the leaders. But as the race progressed, it became clear that Kira was operating on a different level entirely. Where the other pilots fought against the storm systems, she flowed through them. Where they struggled with the narrow canyon passages, she danced through them like she was performing a choreographed routine. She didn't just win the Outer Rim Championship. She won it by a margin so large that race officials initially suspected a timing error. Her final time was nearly 4 minutes faster than the previous course record, a record that had stood for 15 years. The victory celebration was unlike anything Sam had ever experienced. Kira was presented with the championship trophy by dignitaries from across the galactic community. Prize money that would keep them comfortable for the rest of their lives was transferred to their accounts. Media interviews and endorsement offers flooded in from every corner of known space. But as Sam watched Kira handle the attention with grace and humility, he couldn't shake the feeling that their real challenges were just beginning. The galaxy had taken notice of what they had accomplished, and not all of that attention would be welcome. Success, Sam was learning, could be more dangerous than failure, and in a galaxy where technology often meant power, their revolutionary biomechanical integration system was bound to attract interest from people who saw it as more than just a racing advantage. As they prepared to return to Haven's Edge with the championship trophy, Sam made a mental note to upgrade the security systems in his workshop. Something told him they were going to need them. The diplomatic ship appeared in Haven's Edge orbit without warning, its sleek hull reflecting the light of the system's twin suns. Sam first learned about it when Mayor Chen called his workshop, her voice tight with worry that she tried to hide behind official politeness. "Sam, we have visitors," she said. "Important ones. They're asking about you and Kira." Sam looked across his workshop to where Kira was performing routine maintenance on her pod racer, her movements efficient and confident as she checked each system. 3 months had passed since the Outer Rim Championship, and life had settled into a comfortable routine. Kira practiced daily. Sam worked on various colony repair jobs, and they both tried to ignore the constant stream of interview requests and business proposals that arrived on every supply ship. "What kind of visitors?" Sam asked, though he already suspected the answer. "Galactic Racing Authority," Mayor Chen replied. "Full diplomatic credentials. They've requested a formal meeting with both of you this afternoon." Sam felt his stomach tighten. He'd been expecting this visit ever since Kira's championship victory had made galactic news. The attention their biomechanical integration technology had attracted went far beyond the racing community. Military contractors, research institutions, and government agencies had all expressed interest in understanding how their system worked. Did they say what they want to discuss? Mayor Chen hesitated. Technical specifications according to their request. They want to understand the principles behind Kira's neural interface system. After ending the call, Sam walked over to where Kira was working. She looked up at his approach, immediately sensing his mood. "Bad news?" she asked. "Maybe," Sam said. "The Galactic Racing Authority is here. They want to meet with us." Kira's expression darkened. They want to take away my Podracer. We don't know that yet, Sam said, though privately he shared her concerns. Maybe they're just curious about the technology. But as they prepared for the meeting, both of them knew this wasn't a social call. The biomechanical integration system they'd developed represented a quantum leap in cybernetic technology. In the wrong hands, it could be used for purposes far removed from Podracer racing. The meeting took place in Haven's Edge's modest government building, a prefab structure that doubled as town hall, courthouse, and diplomatic reception center depending on need. Ambassador Vel from the Galactic Racing Authority arrived with a full retinue of technical advisors, legal experts, and security personnel. The contrast between their expensive formal wear and the frontier colony's casual atmosphere was stark. Ambassador Vel was a centauri, tall and elegant with the characteristic silver skin of his species. He spoke with the careful precision of someone accustomed to high-stakes negotiations. "Mr. Rivers, Miss Kira," he began, "thank you for agreeing to meet with us. I want to assure you that our interest in your remarkable achievement comes from genuine scientific curiosity and regulatory necessity." Sam and Kira sat across from the diplomatic team, feeling distinctly outclassed by the formal atmosphere. Sam wore his cleanest work clothes while Kira had dressed in a simple flight suit that made her look very young among all the diplomatic finery. "Our technical analysis of Miss Kira's championship performance has raised some fascinating questions," Ambassador Vel continued. "The biomechanical integration principles you've demonstrated appear to represent technology that shouldn't exist according to our current understanding." He activated a holographic display showing telemetry data from Kira's races. Response times, acceleration curves, and maneuvering capabilities were highlighted in red, indicating values that exceeded theoretical maximums for conventional piloting. These performance metrics suggest neural-machine integration at a level that major research institutions have been trying to achieve for centuries, Ambassador Vel said. "We are naturally curious about how two individuals on a frontier colony managed to accomplish something that has eluded the galaxy's leading scientists." Sam felt the careful phrasing was leading somewhere he didn't want to go. "We got lucky," he said simply. "The right combination of Kira's physiology and available technology." "Perhaps," Ambassador Vel said. "But the implications go far beyond racing, as I'm sure you understand. Neural integration technology of this sophistication could revolutionize everything from starship navigation to industrial automation. The potential benefits to galactic civilization are enormous." Kira spoke for the first time since the meeting began. "You want to study how it works?" "Among other things, yes," Ambassador Vel admitted. "The Galactic Racing Authority has been asked by the Science Council to investigate the technical principles behind your system. We're prepared to offer substantial compensation for your cooperation." He activated another holographic display, this one showing financial figures that made Sam's head spin. The amount being offered would buy them their own planet, let alone make them wealthy beyond imagination. There would also be research positions available, Ambassador Vel continued. "Mr. Rivers, your engineering skills would be highly valued at the Institute of Advanced Technology. Miss Kira, your unique neural compatibility could help us understand biomechanical integration in ways previously impossible." Sam looked at Kira, trying to read her expression. The offer was genuinely tempting. They could continue their work with unlimited resources and the support of the galaxy's finest scientific minds. But there was something in Ambassador Vel's careful phrasing that suggested the cooperation he was requesting might not be entirely voluntary. "What if we prefer to continue our work independently?" Sam asked. Ambassador Vel's expression became more serious. "That would be problematic. Technology of this nature has implications beyond personal choice. The Galactic Security Council has classified biomechanical integration research as strategically significant. There are protocols for handling such developments. The threat was subtle but unmistakable. Cooperation was preferred but not optional." "You're saying we don't have a choice," Kira said, her voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "I'm saying that choices have consequences," Ambassador Vell replied. "The galaxy is a dangerous place. Colonies like Haven's Edge depend on protection from larger governmental bodies. That protection can be re-evaluated when circumstances change." Sam felt anger building in his chest. He'd seen this pattern before on frontier worlds. Something valuable was discovered. Government officials arrived with generous offers, and those who refused to cooperate found themselves facing sudden regulatory problems or security concerns. "We need time to consider your proposal," Sam said carefully. Ambassador Vell nodded. "Of course, but please understand that time is not unlimited. Other parties have expressed interest in your technology. We would prefer to handle this matter through official channels, but if that proves impossible..." He let the sentence hang in the air, the implication clear. If they wouldn't cooperate voluntarily, less pleasant alternatives existed. After the diplomatic team left, Sam and Kira sat in silence for a long time. The workshop that had been their sanctuary now felt exposed and vulnerable. Outside, Haven's Edge continued its daily routine, but Sam knew their quiet life was ending. "They're going to take everything," Kira said finally. "Maybe not everything," Sam replied, but his voice lacked conviction. That night, they stayed, late in the workshop, ostensibly working on routine maintenance but actually trying to process what the meeting meant for their future. The biomechanical integration system that had given Kira her freedom was now the thing that threatened to take it away. "The technology isn't the real problem," Sam said as he worked on a diagnostic routine. "It's what people might do with it." Kira looked up from her own work. "What do you mean?" Sam set down his tools and walked over to where her Podracer sat in its maintenance cradle. The machine looked innocent enough, just an unusually shaped racing vehicle, but he knew the neural interface technology hidden within its structure represented something far more significant. "Think about it," Sam said. "Right now, your neural connection works because of your unique physiology and the specific modifications we made to your prosthetics. But what if someone figured out how to make the system work with anyone? What if they could create soldiers who were neurally linked to weapon systems, or workers who were permanently connected to industrial machinery?" The implications were disturbing. Biomechanical integration could be liberating technology, giving disabled individuals capabilities they never could have imagined. But it could just as easily become a tool for control and exploitation. "They want to turn it into something it was never meant to be," Kira said. "Probably," Sam agreed. "And once they understand how it works, we won't have any control over how it's used." They worked in thoughtful silence for another hour, both of them trying to find a solution to their dilemma. Finally, Kira spoke again. "What if they couldn't understand how it works?" Sam looked at her questioningly. "The neural interface technology requires both the mechanical components and the biological compatibility," Kira continued. "Without my specific physiology, the system is just a collection of interesting but useless parts." Sam began to see where her thinking was heading. "You're talking about destroying the research." "I'm talking about making sure it can't be misused," Kira corrected. "The technology gave me back my ability to fly. It should do the same for others like me, not become a tool for controlling people." The idea was radical and irreversible. Everything they had worked for, everything they had accomplished would be wiped away. But as Sam considered the alternatives, he realized it might be their only option for maintaining some control over their creation's legacy. "Ambassador Vell won't accept that solution," Sam said. "Then we don't ask his permission," Kira replied. Over the next few days, they maintained the pretense of normal activity, while secretly preparing for what they knew would be their last act of defiance. Ambassador Vell's team remained in Haven's Edge, conducting their own technical studies and applying increasing pressure for a decision. The diplomatic language became less diplomatic with each passing day. Veiled threats about Haven's Edge losing its colonial protection status became more explicit. Suggestions that Kira's racing career might face regulatory obstacles grew stronger. The message was clear: cooperate or face consequences. But Sam and Kira had already made their choice. Some things were more valuable than the rewards they offered. Some victories were worth more than the prizes they brought. As they prepared for their final gambit, Sam found himself thinking about the girl who had walked into his workshop months earlier, desperate for a chance to fly again. She had achieved everything she'd dreamed of and more. Now she was willing to sacrifice it all to ensure that others wouldn't be exploited by their creation. It was, Sam thought, exactly what he should have expected from someone with the courage to trust a frontier mechanic with her dreams. The decision came to them during the long hours before dawn, when the workshop was quiet except for the soft hum of diagnostic equipment and the distant sound of wind through the colony's prefab structures. Sam found Kira sitting beside her Podracer, her hands resting on the machine's smooth hull in what had become an unconscious gesture of connection. "You're sure about this?" Sam asked, though he already knew her answer. "I've been sure since Ambassador Vell walked into that meeting room," Kira replied. "The moment I saw how he looked at me, like I was a specimen to be studied rather than a person to be respected." They had spent the past week watching the diplomatic team conduct their investigation. Technical specialists had taken detailed scans of every component they could access. Biological experts had requested tissue samples and neural mapping data. Legal advisors had drawn up contracts that would have made them wealthy, but would have also made them property of the Galactic research establishment. Through it all, Ambassador Vell had maintained his polite diplomatic facade, but Sam could see the calculation behind his silver eyes. This wasn't about scientific advancement or galactic benefit. This was about control of technology that could shift the balance of power across known space. "They'll try to stop us," Sam said. "I know," Kira replied. "That's why we have to move tonight." Their plan was simple in concept but complex in execution. They would systematically destroy every trace of the biomechanical integration technology, starting with the neural interface components and working their way through the entire system. The goal wasn't just to prevent others from copying their work, but to ensure that the principles behind it couldn't be reverse-engineered from fragments. Sam had spent days identifying every component that contained unique technology. Circuit. Boards with modified neural interface pathways, biomechanical actuators that bridged organic and synthetic systems, control algorithms that translated Atlari thought patterns into machine commands. All of it would have to go. "Once we start, there's no going back," Sam warned. "This isn't just your pod racer we're destroying. It's months of work, breakthrough discoveries, technology that could help other people with disabilities like yours." Kira was quiet for a long moment, considering the weight of what they were about to do. "The technology could help people," she said finally, "but only if it remains under the control of people who understand what it's really for. In the wrong hands, it becomes something else entirely." She stood up and walked to her workbench, where she began gathering the tools they would need. Besides, the real breakthrough wasn't in the circuits or the algorithms. It was in remembering that people and machines work best as partners, not as master and slave. They worked through the night with systematic thoroughness. First, they carefully removed every component that contained proprietary biomechanical integration technology, neural interface circuits, biological compatibility modules, adaptive control systems. All were cataloged and prepared for destruction. The hardest part was dismantling the pod racer itself. The machine had become more than a vehicle to both of them. It was proof that impossible dreams could become reality with enough determination and ingenuity. Watching it come apart piece by piece felt like losing a close friend. "It's just a machine," Kira said as they removed the neural connection ports from the cockpit, but Sam could hear the sadness in her voice. "No," Sam replied. "It was never just a machine. It was hope made real." They used a variety of methods to ensure complete destruction. Electronic components were subjected to electromagnetic pulses that scrambled their circuits beyond any possibility of recovery. Mechanical parts were dissolved in industrial acid that broke down their molecular structure. Software and data files were overwritten dozens of times with random information, before the storage devices were physically destroyed. By morning, all that remained was a pile of unrecognizable debris and the memory of what they had accomplished together. Ambassador Vell arrived at the workshop shortly after sunrise, accompanied by his full technical team and a squad of security personnel. His diplomatic composure cracked when he saw the destruction that greeted him. "What have you done?" he demanded, staring at the twisted remnants of technology that had fascinated the galaxy's scientific community. "Made sure it can't be misused," Sam replied simply. Ambassador Vell's silver skin flushed darker with anger. "You've destroyed irreplaceable research, technology that could have benefited billions of sentient beings across the galaxy. Or controlled them," Kira said, stepping forward to stand beside Sam. "We've seen what happens when powerful people get access to tools they don't understand." The ambassador gestured to his security team, who began moving to surround Sam and Kira. "You've committed a serious crime against galactic scientific advancement. This matter will not end here." "Actually, it will," Sam said calmly. "Because we didn't break any laws. We destroyed our own property developed with our own resources on our own time. Unless you're planning to arrest us for refusing to cooperate with your research program." Ambassador Vell's expression made it clear that he was considering exactly that option. But they all knew the political implications would be severe. Arresting frontier colonists for refusing to share their inventions would send a message to every independent world that innovation was dangerous. "You've made a serious error in judgment," the ambassador said finally. "The protection this colony enjoys depends on maintaining positive relationships with galactic authorities. That protection can be reconsidered when circumstances change." "Is that a threat?" Mayor Chen asked from the workshop doorway. She had arrived with several other colony leaders, drawn by reports of the diplomatic crisis developing in Sam's workshop. Ambassador Vell turned to face the colonial officials, his diplomatic training reasserting itself. "It's a statement of reality, Mayor Chen. Colonies that fail to contribute to galactic advancement sometimes find themselves facing challenges." "What kind of challenges?" Mayor Chen asked, her voice carrying the authority of someone who had dealt with bureaucratic intimidation before. The ambassador's hesitation was answer enough. Everyone present understood the implicit threat. Trade, restrictions, regulatory difficulties, reduced security protection, all the tools that galactic authorities use to pressure non-compliant worlds into cooperation. But before Ambassador Vell could respond, Sam's communication device chimed with an incoming message, then another, and another. Within minutes, his workshop was receiving communications from across the frontier regions. The news was spreading faster than anyone had expected. Word of what Sam and Kira had done was already reaching other colonies, other independent worlds where people understood the value of maintaining control over their own discoveries. The reaction was not what Ambassador Vell had anticipated. "Seems like folks out here have opinions about your research methods," Sam said as he read through the messages of support that were flooding in. Mechanics, engineers, inventors, and innovators across the frontier were expressing solidarity with the choice to destroy technology rather than see it exploited. More importantly, several colonial governments were questioning the Galactic Racing Authority's right to appropriate private research for strategic purposes. Ambassador Vell realized that his carefully planned acquisition mission was turning into a public relations disaster. The diplomatic approach he had counted on was being undermined by the very people his implied threats were supposed to intimidate. "This isn't over," he said as he prepared to leave with his team. "Yes, it is," Kira replied. "The technology is gone. We're not building another one. You can threaten and pressure all you want, but there's nothing left for you to take." After the diplomatic team departed, Sam and Kira sat in their now empty workshop, surrounded by the remnants of their greatest achievement. The silence felt strange after months of the subtle background hum from Kira's neural interface systems. "Do you regret it?" Sam asked. Kira considered the question seriously. "I regret that we had to do it," she said finally. but I don't regret the choice itself. The technology we created was meant to give people freedom, not take it away. Over the following weeks, the consequences of their decision became clear. Ambassador Vell's threats proved largely empty when several colonial governments formally protested the Galactic Racing Authority's intimidation tactics. The political cost of punishing Haven's Edge for protecting its intellectual property was higher than the authority was willing to pay. More importantly, the story of the human mechanic and the Atlari girl who destroyed their own breakthrough rather than see it, misused, spread throughout the frontier regions. It became a symbol of the independence and self-determination that frontier communities valued above wealth or recognition. Sam returned to his regular work of fixing broken equipment and solving impossible problems with limited resources. The workshop felt empty without Kira's Podracer, but it remained a place where people brought challenges that conventional wisdom said couldn't be solved. Kira began working on a new racing machine, this one built with conventional technology, but incorporating the lessons they had learned about pilot-machine cooperation. It wouldn't have the supernatural performance of their biomechanical integration system, but it would be fast enough to keep her competitive in local racing circuits. Besides, she told Sam as they worked on the new Podracer's control systems, the real secret was never in the technology anyway. It was in understanding that machines work best when they amplify human potential rather than replacing it. The galaxy would have to learn that lesson on its own, one innovation at a time. But on Haven's Edge, in a cluttered workshop where impossible, dreams sometimes became reality, two friends continued their work of building hope from scrap metal and determination. Months later, when racing officials asked Kira how she had developed her exceptional piloting skills, she would smile and give them the same answer every time. I had a good teacher who showed me that the most important part of any machine is the person who operates it. It wasn't the complete truth, but it was the truth that mattered. Some victories were indeed more valuable than the prizes they offered, and some secrets were worth keeping even when the galaxy wanted to take them away. In the end, that might have been the most human thing of all.